thank you for being here. I'm here with Alina Lee, who's a very good songwriter. She's also a very accomplished producer. We also have Jake Stentiford, who's an amazing, also songwriter, I would say, and a very good musician.
Thanks, man.
So we're going to play some music, or jamming, essentially. So this is all from the top of our heads. There's no, no pre-prep stuff. So before we start playing, part of this channel is called Sounds from the Fifth, and that's all based upon the fifth dimension. It's all based upon the idea in my mind at current. Right now, I'm always open to changing my mind on things, but right now I see where we get music, I see it as we're almost like vessels or like receivers from another dimension or realm, whatever you want to call it, and we basically get told that music, essentially what to play. And like, a good example of this is like when you come up with an idea and you don't see it through, and then literally a few weeks later or maybe a month later you see someone else doing the exact same thing that you thought of. That happened to you?
Okay. It's happened with one song for me in terms of like a theme of a song, yes. But I certainly finished the song. Is that the same thing?
Yeah, well you might have been the one that actually did it. You might have been the one to actually
open the door.
Yeah, you were the one to actually achieve that thing. So someone else might have had that song and been like, damn, they did it.
I feel like I've had it the other way around than that, actually. Where it's,
okay.
Yeah. Like, I've come up with something and I've felt like, I'm sure this already exists. And then try as I might, it doesn't. And I'm like, I don't know what that is, but it feels like it's already existed somewhere. Even if I've never heard it here.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean now. I didn't get it at first.
Yeah, that's it. I think like when you're on certain substances, when
like
you're
air.
when you're when you're breathing a lot and you do the Wim Hof method, for instance, there's this you get euphoric, don't you? And you almost especially when you're playing music and doing the breathing exercises. You realize that you're not the one doing the playing.
Something takes over.
Yeah, something takes over.
When you're breathing.
Yeah, when you're breathing. What are your thoughts on that in terms of either of you, in terms of that we are just receivers, essentially, for our ideas?
I would concur that we're a channel of some sort of like those kind of creations flow through us, and we're individually each different sort of vessels to sort of, release an infinitude of versions of sort of, the underlying point of music, which is just vibrational energy in exchange of that.
And what do you reckon, Jake?
Jake's gonna quit the band now.
I was just thinking, I think I've heard this described as, this is sort of like where all creation basically happens, is that you're tapping into some sort of, I don't know, just sort of like, a creative force or energy or something that's sort of constantly there. And that's where like ideas come from. Or it's also like the way that sort of trees grow in their own unique ways, and everything that sort of expresses itself somehow in the world is as a result of tapping into that. That's I also think that was a quote from somebody. I just didn't quote it very well, but that was basically someone else's idea. That I was like, that sums up how I feel about that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean it's also like when what I would call, or what probably loads of people call, is like the flow state. When you're doing a gig or when you're jamming, for instance, and you kind of enter that, you leave your body in a way. When you got your eyes shut and you're playing and stuff, and you get that moment of being somewhere else in like absolute bliss almost. I mean, that's hence why I love jamming. I think because you get to that state.
Wasn't me. Basically, after you come out of it, it's like, that wasn't me.
Yeah.
That's it, yeah. And I think, I'm assuming you both believe in the flow. I don't know, what do you refer to, like the flow state or the state where, like I said, I feel like you're leaving the body.
flow state's a pretty good definition, I'd say. But, yeah, Jake seems to
I don't know.
pondering
I feel like maybe I felt it more rather than like an out of body thing. Is like that's like when you're really present.
Yeah.
You know? So maybe you're not aware of your body as such if that's not what you're focusing on. But maybe if you were like dancing or something, you'd still be in a flow state, but you'd be aware of your body. But
So you're becoming more present, essentially.
Yeah.
So it's almost like the opposite of what I'm saying. It's like you're actually more feeling of what you're doing in a sense.
yeah.
Interesting. I find that the flow state that I experience is sort of a surrender to everything I know I should be doing, if that makes sense. So, you know, when you're playing because you know how to play something or you've practiced it or you're performing, but then it's the state of sort of not doing any of those things and it's just happening because essentially what you're trying to say or trying to feel or trying to give to another is just gonna happen, in if that kind of makes sense. So like letting it happen and sort of letting the release of like, you know, I know that I can play this, or it's kind of like, I think about this a lot in music theory, where it's like, I know that this might make sense and I'm gonna play that because in my head, the mechanics and the way that my body works to what I think is supposed to happen because that's what I'm trying to say. The flow state for me is just sort of the surrender to the make sense of all that and then just kind of like finding myself just doing it and doing things that I didn't even know I could do. And I find a lot of time when I'm breathing a lot of air and I'm playing music with my friends, oftentimes suddenly you're kind of like, so I think I know what you mean by it's not really out of body, but you're sort of further in and you're so inside, then that it feels out of body because you're literally watching yourself like conduct this whole orchestra that suddenly you can finally, you know, orchestrate effectively entirely in ways that, you know, you wouldn't normally do when you're sort of here rather than like here, pulled away from it.
So would you say it's almost like you're letting go, almost?
Yeah.
Like of just your flow. Again, flow. You're flowing.
Yeah, and I kind of try and remind myself of that oftentimes whenever I'm playing music or writing, of just like, whenever I write, for example, I find more of a blockage when I'm trying, you know, when I'm thinking too much of what I like to say. Some people ask me sometimes, like, how do you write a song? You know, some people, they're like, they think about all these things and then they go back to it and they're really like trying to construct a message. Whereas for me, at least my process in trying to tap into where I think the true essence of my songs need to come from is just like remove all that, what am I feeling, even if it's just like one note or one frequency that I hit on the guitar, and I stay in that spot until I feel something enough to understand what needs to come out of that. And then I just try and go back there, which obviously air and other things can help stick to those feelings, but yeah.
And water from the fifth dimension.
And water from the fifth dimension, such good water, holy water, really.
Yeah. I think that's what fascinates me the most, is like, and that's why I really want to combine these two things, you know, jam, because I think jamming's the time, for me personally, I think when you jam is when I get to that flow state the most, or when I'm like gigging, which I don't gig very often, but I think that, but it's interesting that kind of losing control, or not losing control, sorry, but like letting go.
Well, it's like when Jake and I, when we first started playing together, I think it still all has to do with flow state. Everything we create that really has ever, you know, transcended in the way that we wanted to was always going back to the first thing that came out after he heard a song of mine. Genuinely, everything we've written is mostly jams, because it's like, you know, we have a chat about it, we understand the physical realm of what this song means, and then there's the connection on the feeling of it, and then he channels through his interpretation and understanding of that feeling moving through his vessel and his experiences in his life, and then that is what beautifully ties in and creates magic, I think.
Yeah. So sometimes we like then carry on working on it though in a more intentional
And
way,
then we lose it.
and then we're like, wait, just listen to the first one, and
What
then
was that iPhone
you
recording
spend
that we
ages
did?
just going, wait, what? There was like one thing you did. And it's like
Yeah.
it's just some idea that you can't even remember how you came up with it in the first place.
Because it's not logical, you know, this place that we're talking about.
I think that's the interesting thing as well. It's almost like sometimes when you record something, it's never going to be the same as when you just do it and play it, and that's something so special about that. When you just jam and there's no, there's no control. It's like that experiment. There's I should know the name of it. There's that experiment they did when they shoot particles into a wall, and basically, if someone's observing it, it's a different reaction to when they're not observing it. And
Yeah.
I can't remember. Do you know the
It's
name?
a law of observation. Isn't it?
Yeah, it's just observation principle or something, isn't it?
But yeah, I think.
I hope you zoom into that reaction.
But yeah, I think it's that is fascinating. I think it's amazing. But I think do either of you think that music is a portal to other dimensions, or I would probably say the fifth dimension, or opening that up?
When you say the fifth dimension, what do you mean by the fifth dimension?
I mean, I could get into. I mean, it's probably something I probably should talk about. But I think
so 5 comes after 4, and basically,
not really sure I even know what the fourth one is. So
in kind of, and again, this is just where I'm sat right now. I think in a year's time I might think differently. But the fifth dimension to me is essentially the all-knowing and the everything. Time doesn't exist. It's very much everything or anything that has happened or will happen is happening simultaneously.
It's
essentially. It's air. So that's why I think that we kind of connect to that. Essentially, we have opportunities to get to that point and receive information that allows us to better ourselves. Because and the reason we're here is because the fifth dimension ascends. And these aren't my words. I love Matthias de Stephanos. I'm a big follower of him. And I know you know who he is.
I do.
I don't know if you know who he is.
I've listened to him.
But getting on I suppose a deeper level, do either of you think that music is a kind of, do you use that as an outlet for when you're feeling low, or through kind of almost like a way of improving or growing as an individual? Do you use music in that way, or do you see music as a way that it can improve you, either listening to different artists or creating yourself?
I don't know. I think sometimes, like when it comes to creating it, sometimes it's almost like that's an easier way of expressing how you're feeling than trying to describe it, for me anyway. Like, I don't find formulating my ideas into words very easy. So sometimes just playing something will be a bit more of a reflection of what I'm feeling, I suppose. Yeah.
I'll make an observation to my dear friend Jakey, our dear friend Jakey. Whenever we sit in deep conversations and we ask him a real question, he's often sat with his guitar, and while he's actually trying to say what he's trying to say, he'll strike a chord time and time again. I love you, man. Yeah, I think for me it's definitely a place of like solitude for all those things. Whether if it's, the place to release or find understanding or move through all those things, And I think from all of that, inevitably, growth happens and transformation happens and, learning happens. I would say for everyone, music and all of these sort of vibrations are that for people, whether they realize it or not. And I think that people who are just simply more distant to that center is just the case. But most people who, there's just there's no evidence proving that no one doesn't respond to music in, you know, an atomic level. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's very rare that you find someone that doesn't resonate with music. Like,
Or they're NPCs.
yeah, I think I've met one person in my life that actually told me he doesn't like music, he doesn't understand it. But that was one person a long time ago. On that point, do either of you believe in the idea that music or even frequencies can heal?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's quite likely. I've tried some of that out, like healing frequencies stuff, like where you sort of lie on the floor and listen to like music with those frequencies in, and I don't know if it does actually heal you or not, but it feels great to do that. Like, you certainly feel like you've been nourished in some way if you just lie there for like 10 minutes or so, just doing nothing with those frequencies playing. I don't know what it is doing to you, but there's no way it's having no effect at all.
Well, they say that is it F sharp is the one that's the chord of the universe, I think.
What, an F sharp?
I just pictured someone like...
No.
Can you play an F sharp for me?
Can
we hear it? Okay, there we are. It sounds pretty universal.
Makes sense.
Right, it can sound more universal.
I feel scared and safe at the same time.
Healed.
Which is what, in a way, that's, in my mind, that's what it's all about. It's a balance.
Yeah.
The third dimension, it has to be a balance. There has to be good and bad. And when you go away from that, there is no such thing as good and bad. Because it nothing really...
Yeah, one can't exist without the other anyways.
Exactly. Without bad, we can't grow as people. I love this. It's great.
The interesting thing about, believing if frequencies can heal, that my stance on it is that there's no real debate anymore just because of the proof.
Yeah, I mean, I would 100% agree. I mean, obviously,
like
I'm a believer of
biology and science and what we're made of and energy. It's just all the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same as like there's some theories now that's saying that's how they move certain big objects. If you have enough people chanting.
It's not magic. It's just physics.
Yeah, that's it. Everything, from a science point of view, everything has a resonant frequency. So if you to play an oscillator and went up through the frequency, certain things start to vibrate at different frequencies. And
it's interesting because I grew up like having my own sort of spiritual path, if you will, through like, I guess, the upbringing of being surrounded by people that like, you had to really know, you had to really like prove things, you had to really get to the crux of it, not just assumption. There's no assuming. So like, backed by the proof, then it's undeniable. Then I went through this journey of kind of like experiencing things and that weren't explainable until now. I went through this whole process of, believing, and just like, there's still truth to that side of like, well, I laid there and I felt it and I believe it and it's real because it worked. And then obviously having that backed up by, well, this is why, is just great. But I think, I think we all know deep down somewhere inside, our intuition knows certain things as well.
I should mention that both of these people are very good friends of mine, very, very close to me. And I kind of know their beliefs on certain things, but I mean, you're both spiritual people, aren't you?
Yeah, more so than I used to be, for sure.
He's definitely more so than he used to be.
Yeah, because I remember having a chat with you, Jake, at one point, and I remember you were a little bit of a nihilist at one point.
A nihilist.
A nihilist.
Yeah.
Do you mean a nihilist or atheist or?
No, not well.
Both.
I mean,
I suppose so. Not in.
It's because he finally breathed air, and he was lying on my sofa.
No, it was. I don't know. I don't think I was a nihilist. I think I just got sort of interested in the idea of it for a while. I found it quite a fascinating
temporary fad
as a way you could approach life
Well, it's easy to fall into that, isn't it? Because when you start, if you look from just a science-based point of view, the universe is so big, and then you've got multiple universes past that, and it's like, well, what are we with this like nothing? And it's so it's kind of easy to think that way, isn't it? It's like nothing matters because nothing really does matter, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, what was the change for you?
Was
it breathing air?
No, the change already happened. I think I think it was just being a bit more open-minded and starting to listen to other people's thoughts on it more, like reading books and listening to podcasts and things about. So that sort of planted the seed of there being a bit more to it for me, and like it being a bit less sort of mechanical, the sort of Newtonian universe. And then to actually feel it, I think it was more from going into like meditative practices a bit, like yoga and meditations, and just actually sort of really trying to feel what's at the core of it when you just sit there and there's no distractions or stimulation from the outside, and what you hear or what you kind of feel is present then.
Connecting with yourself more.
Yeah. Would it? Because I feel like whenever I go to places like that, it's always from a negative point. So a negative point makes me feel a certain way, and then I move to look at things like that. Like when I've become more spiritual is usually when I've had trauma.
Yeah.
And then I kind of grow from that and start. The more trauma I have, the more kind of spiritual I become. Is it kind of similar for you? Would you say?
Yeah, I think those events sort of shake you out of your sort of what would you say, like not a trance, but just like the sort of state that you're just existing in day to day without noticing, and then these things happen, and your whole perspective on everything changes. So I think that's when you're sort of more open to receive other thoughts or experiences of what it is to be a being.
Yeah. And what about you, Alina? Your thoughts on this?
I think you're right I can understand that oftentimes it probably would happen in times of struggle, because when everything, or even if it's not a struggle, but maybe if someone was, in full isolation and everything around them that can so easily distract them. So, this piece fits there. You're bound to ask more questions, and you're bound to face more realities that you kind of just can't put a label on. Because I guess when you're nihilist, you don't really find meaning in things. You go around, so how can you really kind of connect with a divine experience if it hit you in the face? But I think part of part of what helps us recognize that sort of side of things is having an experience that shows you have an impact on this world in less of a pragmatic way, right? So like, even if it's as small as, serendipity or something that happens by just a weird coincidence that can't be a coincidence, kind of opens you up a slight bit to asking those questions. Or once something happens in your life and your vibration is higher, that reflects back into your life, and you'll start noticing those things where people, tell you that, they feel certain things or whatever, if that makes sense, and so like these bits kind of, I think can help guide someone from a nihilistic approach to actually, I think it just comes down to feeling something.
I think a lot of it is because we're all on our own journey, aren't we? And I think no matter what we say to people, they'll always ignore it, I think, most of the time. And
rite of passage.
Yeah, we always got to learn the way through these things, I suppose. And I feel it's always trauma that gets us out of it. And and I think on that point though, because I also believe that we're all, when you take yourself out of this human experience, we're all the same. We're all the same being, essentially, like in the sense that we're the same entity, but it's right now we're a slice. We're each of us experience a slice of that entity. It's like there's a really good video on YouTube called The Egg, and it's kind of it's really good. I don't know if any of you have seen it.
You love The Egg.
I think I sent it to both of you.
Yeah,
didn't
I've
I?
watched
We
it.
know about The Egg.
And I love it. To me, it resonated with me so much, and I love that. What are your thoughts on that? Do you reckon?
I think I understand what you're saying. That it's almost like each living thing is like whatever that sort of life force is expressing itself as that thing or that being or that animal, that plant, you know. I think that was the gist of what the egg was saying. Which that sort of would be like what I suppose the Tao is like. The Taoism seems to talk about that sort of. It's like just sort of the natural way of things, and then everything is its own expression of that, but that doesn't create them. It's just there. I don't know. I shouldn't talk about Taoism. I don't know enough about it. But
They say nothing is created nor destroyed, which is the same, I think, essence.
Well, I always, actually, we'll say what we're going to say, but there is. I just always remember what you told me.
But go on.
About when you're a kid and what you said to your dad because you what was it? You thought you had to. I can't. You explain it because it was so funny. It's like the cutest thing I've ever heard.
When I was a kid, we're all kids. We step on bugs and or accidentally kill things without knowing. And I forgot what it was that I accidentally killed. Was it a spider or something?
I think it was a spider.
A spider.
You told me, yeah.
And I was really upset about it. Went to my dad, and he was like, my dad's got you wonder where my dry sarcasm comes from, or am I joking around? It's my father. And he goes like, reincarnation, you will become the last thing you kill. And so I go to bed, and that's going circles in my mind, and I'm freaking out. And I go so far as to coming to realize that, well, if I want to reincarnate as a human, I need to murder someone. So I went to my parents' bedroom, fucking crying about it. And I was just like distraught, telling my dad this realization I had. And they just broke out in laughter at me. And then, I guess set it straight, but that's what I went through.
Yeah, careful what you say to kids.
Yeah, that's it.
Honestly, but yeah, in my thoughts on the egg is the egg is one depiction of the same understanding that I do share. I think I said this recently to someone that obviously we have egos, and that's sort of what separates us, and that's sort of what makes us sort of jolt at that thought that we're all the same. But in the core essence of it all and beyond that, I do believe that we are all just forms of source energy, whatever that source of, the true energy of the makeup of everything. It's just these different, sort of channels of it that are put in place for whatever purpose, and either it's learning or to give or to experience or whatever it is. And I think it helps to remember that when you approach sort of death and things like that, because you often can remember that, well, if you share the belief in the egg, it's not really going anywhere, and part of the journey might be just learning to let go and accepting the experience as is.
Yeah, and I think
the egg.
Yeah, I think with the egg, it's the idea is we have to experience everything before we can transcend, essentially.
So like you just keep going until you're done.
With someone, has to experience everything essentially, and that's the idea of that we're all just a slice of something bigger.
And maybe that's why people have reincarnated many and more times than another.
Yeah, well, that's because exactly.
You're not done. Oh yeah.
Yeah, you're not done. You've got.
If you don't actually face or do whatever you're supposed to do, you're gonna keep. It's like any cycle. That's a large scale, right? But if you think about like the smallest cycle, like of our experiences, is like these situations or things keep cropping up in your life, or the same relationship will happen until you literally have learned better.
Amazing. Well, I think it might be time to play some music. I think we should get into that. call that? We should have a name for each of these little jams.
Nihilist.
Nihilist. It seemed quite happy for
Yeah,
a
it's quite
Exactly.
hopeful, wasn't
for a
it?
Exactly.
Nihilist egg. That's
nihilist egg. There's
Nihilist
something-
egg.
nihilist
There you
egg.
go. There's
Wow,
the
that's
paradox.
like a paradox, a contradiction. I like it. Right, okay.
you want us to write you an intro theme?
I've already got it. So
Oh, he's already fucking wrote it.
What the fuck? Why are we here? I will say to the world that is watching, I don't know, like whoever that is, honored to be the first official guest.
Or were we?
I guess not, were we? This is.
It's all already happened.
Thank you both for doing this with me. It means a lot. There's a reason why I brought these two on, because they are very. I love playing with them. I love jamming with them, and I love talking with them. Something else Andy's mentioned, that you two play in a band. Well, actually, all three of us play in a band together.
We do play in a band
We
together.
all play in a band together called Alina Lee.
Or the space in between.
Space in between.
We are the space.
We
Space in
are
between
the
is the
space in
band.
between.
Alina Lee is the visionary.
Oh.
And it all comes from the fifth.
It all comes from the fifth, yeah.
Well, really, I mean, yeah, she's not doing anything. She's just
I just am there.
receiving someone else's.
I stand there like this.